The ocean wind struck Electra the moment she burst out of the beach house, sharp and relentless, as if the world itself were trying to force her back into awareness, to ground her in something real when everything inside her had just been torn apart. The sand shifted unevenly beneath her feet as she ran, her breath coming in fractured bursts, her vision blurred not only by the sting of tears, but by the overwhelming collapse of certainty that followed her like a shadow she could not outrun. The sky above remained vast and indifferent, stretching endlessly over a life that no longer felt like her own, a life that had been rewritten in a matter of minutes by a truth buried for decades. She did not stop immediately. There was no destination, no clear direction, only movement driven by instinct, by the desperate need to escape the suffocating weight of what she had just learned. Every step felt disconnected, as if her body were acting independently from her mind, as if she were running not just from the house, but from herself. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore echoed in her ears, blending with the chaotic rhythm of her thoughts, creating a dissonance that refused to settle into anything coherent. Behind her, Will followed. He did not call out again, not immediately, recognizing that words in this moment would not reach her, would not anchor her to anything stable. Instead, he closed the distance slowly, his own breath uneven, his mind racing through the implications of what they had uncovered. The shock had not fully settled into him yet. It lingered at the edges, waiting to be processed, waiting to be understood. But his focus remained on her, on the way she was unraveling under the weight of something no one should have to confront so suddenly, so completely. When she finally stopped, it was not because she had found clarity, but because her body could no longer sustain the momentum. She stumbled, catching herself just enough to avoid falling, her hands pressing against her knees as she tried to steady her breathing. The air felt too thin, too sharp, as if every inhale carried the echo of something breaking inside her. "This can't be real," she said, the words barely audible, more a breath than a statement. Will stepped closer, but not too close, giving her space while still remaining present, a silent anchor in a moment where everything else had shifted beyond recognition. "We heard it," he said carefully. "We saw the records." "This isn't no," she interrupted, her voice sharper now, cutting through the fragile attempt at grounding. "I don't care what we heard. That doesn't make it true. That doesn't make it me." Her hands trembled as she lifted them, pressing them against her temples, as if she could physically push the memory away, as if she could contain the truth before it spread further into her mind. But the more she resisted it, the stronger it became, weaving itself into everything she had ever believed about herself, twisting familiar memories into something unrecognizable. "I know who I am," she continued, though the certainty in her voice had begun to fracture. "I've always known. You don't just change that. You don't just rewrite everything like it never mattered." Will listened, understanding that this was not denial in its simplest form. This was survival. The mind resisting a truth too overwhelming to integrate all at once, too disruptive to accept without consequence. "You're still you," he said quietly. "Nothing about that changes." But even as he said it, he could feel the inadequacy of the words, the way they fell short of addressing what she was actually facing. Because this was not just about identity in a philosophical sense. This was about blood, about origin, about a connection that had been hidden, manipulated, reshaped without her knowledge or consent. Electra's gaze lifted slowly, her eyes searching his, not for reassurance, but for something more definitive, something that could either confirm or dismantle the reality pressing in around her. "If that's true," she said, her voice quieter now, but no less intense, "then why does it feel like everything just disappeared?" The question hung between them, unanswered, unanswerable in the way she needed it to be. Back at the beach house, the silence had taken on a different weight. The basement remained as they had left it, the file still open, the tape still resting in the player, as if the past itself had been disturbed and left exposed. The truth no longer existed as something hidden. It had been brought into the light, and with it came consequences that could not be contained within those walls. Katie's collapse had not just been physical. When she regained consciousness, the world around her had shifted into something unfamiliar, shaped by betrayal that cut deeper than anything she had experienced before. The fragments of the truth returned slowly, painfully, each one reinforcing the reality she had tried to escape even in her brief loss of awareness. She turned her head, her gaze landing on Bill. The silence between them was immediate and absolute, charged with everything that had not yet been said. "You knew," she said again, her voice weaker now, but no less certain. "All this time you knew." Bill did not move. There was no attempt to soften the truth, no effort to redirect or diminish it. The weight of it had already settled, and any attempt to reshape it would only deepen the damage. "Yes," he said. The word did not come easily, but did not hesitate either. Katie closed her eyes, the confirmation hitting harder than the revelation itself. Because doubt, no matter how painful, still allowed for possibility. Certainty left no room for that. "You let me believe," her voice faltered, the sentence collapsing under the weight of everything it carried. "You let me build a life around something that wasn't real." Bill's expression tightened, not with defensiveness, but with something more complex, something that suggested the decision had not been as simple as it now appeared. "I made a choice," he said. At the time, it felt like the right one. Katie's eyes snapped open, the anger cutting through the exhaustion with a clarity that left no room for ambiguity. "For who?" she demanded. "For me? Or for you?" The question lingered, unanswered, because the truth was not simple, and now it was too late to change it. Brooke stood nearby, her concern deepening into something more urgent as she began to grasp the full scope of what this revelation would mean. This was not just a personal betrayal. It was a fracture that would ripple through every connection, every relationship, every shared history between the Logan and Spencer families. "This is going to destroy everything," she said quietly, the realization settling into her with a weight that felt almost unbearable. And she was right. Because the truth, once revealed, does not remain contained. It spreads. It reshapes. It demands to be acknowledged, even when acknowledgement comes at a cost no one is prepared to pay. Back on the shoreline, Electra stood facing the ocean, her body still, but her mind in relentless motion. The waves continued their steady rhythm, unchanged by the turmoil unfolding just beyond their reach. There was something almost cruel in that constancy, in the way the world refused to shift in response to something that had changed everything for her. "I don't know who I am anymore," she said, the words coming quietly now, stripped of the earlier resistance, replaced by something more fragile, more honest. Will stepped closer, this time closing the distance fully, his presence no longer tentative but steady, deliberate. "You're the same person you were before we walked into that house," he said. "The only difference is now you have more of the truth." She shook her head slightly, the movement slow, uncertain. "That's not how it feels," she said. And it wasn't, because truth does not always clarify. Sometimes it destabilizes. Sometimes it takes everything that once felt certain and replaces it with something far more complicated. Electra turned away from the ocean, her gaze moving back toward the house in the distance, the place where everything had changed. For a moment, it seemed as though she might return, might face what had been uncovered, might begin the process of understanding. But then something shifted. The hesitation disappeared, replaced by something more immediate, more decisive. "I can't do this," she said. And before Will could respond, before he could reach for her, she stepped back, then turned, her movement quick, determined, driven by the same instinct that had sent her running before. This time, she did not slow down. She ran again, away from the house, away from the truth, away from everything that had just redefined her life. And as she disappeared into the distance, the future she left behind felt more uncertain than ever.